On the Discovery Channel show, or Engineering Impossible, you said that when you were a kid, you were inspired by a gear on a table.
Yes.
You saw the cities of the future.
But Gazeki put the wrong gear in.
Oh.
He put a worm gear in. It was a gear with teeth sticking out like the buildings, like the drawing. I just looked at the gear and said, gee, that'd make a great center.
Now, was that when you were real young or about the time of the other things?
Yes, that was very long ago. That was way before Gazeki's days. That was like when I was about 15 years old. I did the gear thing. I made a drawing of it. I think I may have some around.
All right, and I forgot to ask about the incident where you asked, why does it rain at sea?
Some minister was talking about how brilliant the Lord was. He makes it rain to make the plants grow. I said, if they grew without the rain, that'd be much more interesting. I don't know why he has to make it rain and make the plants grow. Also, I asked him why it rained at sea, and that's when he got angry. He said, hold your hands out, and he hit me with a ruler.
Now, that was at a church?
What's that?
Was that a church?
This was at a church with a lot of youngsters there.
Did you go there very often?
What?
Did you go there very often?
No.
Was that in Bensonhurst?
Yes.
And were you in school?
What's that?
Were you in school at that time?
I don't think so.
So it was after?
Yes.
Jacque, I thought that happened, like before you were 13.
A lot of stuff happened when I was very young.
No, I mean, because didn't your mother send you to temple and she made you be bar mitzvah?
That was totally different. That was
I thought that
Jewish temple.
Ah,
So you went to a Christian church too?
I had to just recite. I had no idea what I was talking about. I just had to recite. I didn't know what the hell anything meant. All I remember is Bo Ba Be, Lo La Le. That's Hebrew, ABC, something like that, but it was nothing. The rabbis were low grade, too low grade. The priests were professors of semantics alongside of rabbis.
Oh my God.
That's what I meant. I meant that they were very, very simple rabbis. They just were involved. At least the priests were a little bit on the skeptical side, little tiny bit. They had questions, but they said, there are many things, many mysteries, which will be revealed to us when we ascend into heaven. But they were straight about that. They admitted they didn't understand a lot of things, but they'd have to leave it to God. You have to have faith. To doubt it meant that you might lose your position up there. So you just believe. It's based on faith.
So it was a priest that whacked you, not a rabbi?
It was a priest that whacked me, yes.
I'm just kidding.
He was not very bright.
Well,
a priest that would have said, I hadn't thought of that, But he wasn't very bright. I didn't think he was.
How did you end up going to a Christian?
I went to Satanic churches, Lutheran, Presbyterian,
when you were young.
Many different churches. And I asked a lot of questions. I really didn't know whether there was a God or not. But I wanted to know why.
Where did you find a satanic church to check out?
Oh, there was some program on the air or newspaper article about a satanic church. It was just an evil article, but it didn't tell us anything about it. It said that these people worship Satan. I didn't look at it as a satanic church. They said, Satan rules the world. Proof to all the trouble. And they said, if you worship Satan, you have nothing to worry about, because he's the one that makes things bad for you. So if you keep him happy, God doesn't create evil, they said, only Satan does.
More
And they
reasonable.
said Satan is really God.
So they believe
the
that.
wrong guy came down. They believe that,
So
straight
they-
face.
So they believe that Satan created the world. Is that what?
Yeah,
they
but
thought?
Satan is God. Because Satan said, they opened their sermon, to do as thy will shall be the whole of the law. I mean, if you want to have sex or anything, you do it. And that's the restrictions are made by Satan, the real Satan that rules the earth. He's the one that said no sex until you get married, and no questions, everything. But Satan says you do whatever you want to do. And the guy that emphasized that was named Sir Alistair Crawley. Did you ever hear of him?
I was going to ask.
He wrote a book called The Beast, or they wrote a book about him. He was a very nice guy. He believed in satanic worship. Sir Alistair Crawley.
Did you meet him or?
I never met Crawley, but I did meet, at the temple, I did meet the people that ran it. And they had ceremony and all that sort of.
So they were churchy
robes.
as
Yeah,
well.
they were churchy.
Yeah.
They marched
Did
and
they have a
said-
church type of building that they?
No, they met at one another's home. I don't think they had. I don't know.
Did they have satanic worship like they have today? That they call it, whatever
Well,
that
they
might
didn't
be.
call it that. Remember, they thought Satan was God.
It makes more sense.
Yeah, and she was an actress. I forgot her name. Anyway, she was an actress, and she told me that she believed in that straight. And my brother introduced me to her. He was studying drama under her. And she said she got in a cab one day, and the taxi driver looked like a kind of guy that can satisfy her sexually. So she said, let's have sex. So whatever she felt, she did. And she was very emotional. She would sing and crack while she was singing, and she'd weep for cracking, and then she'd sing again and crack. My brother used to there her, Anyway, she wasn't very bright. And Smith was a male. Smith was also an actor, movie actor. And he always had a straight face when he worshipped, which was rough on me. How straight these people were. They really believed that. They were not people that were, well, maybe. No, they really believed it. And they were comfortable with it.
Were they into sacrificing a goat or something?
Not to
like
my
that?
knowledge. But they did, whatever you want to do should be the whole of the law. Whatever you feel like doing is the right way. They didn't have any right or wrong.
Did they say so? If you felt like killing somebody, they felt it was you just,
That I don't
you just
know.
did it, and
I never did question that.
they didn't have much morality.
Well, they had their own moral. They were very moral. But whatever that is to them, morality.
Did you ever hear about Antoine LaVey, the LaVeyan Satanist in California?
Well, the guy, LaVey, was assistant to the dean at Princeton, a guy named LaVey.
Yeah, they're different. It's different.
No.
Okay. Well, yeah, they believe that, they don't really believe Satan is God. They just see him symbolically as representing,
Well, the
They
Thalamites
represent everything that is suppressed in people, I think is what they
Yes.
used to say. Everything that's suppressed is
Yes.
represented by
Satan.
the beast or whatever they
Yeah.
called it.
Sir Alistair Crawley is the founder of that. He was an Englishman, knighted. That's where he got the Sir from. And the book about him was called The Beast. They called him the Beast. He was a fairly nice guy. I never met him, but what I read about him.
Why did they knight him? Not in relation to the
I don't
religion,
know.
was it?
I have no idea. Sir Alistair Crawley was his name.
Even by that time, you must have surely gone in there and thought, this is fucking ridiculous, didn't you?
What's that?
Didn't you go in and
Oh,
think this
yeah.
was really ridiculous
Oh,
as soon
yeah.
as you saw it?
Yeah, I pissed in my pants at the ceremony. I just found it to be utterly unacceptable.
Were they called the Phalamites or something
Yes.
like that? Okay.
Thalamites,
Thalamite,
exactly. They were thalamic people.
Mm.
The thalamite is the old brain,
Mhm.
the hypothalamus.
Yeah.
And the cortex is the new brain. Physics, science, reason. But they were called the thalamites. Where did you get that from?
You actually talked about it in one of your really old lectures.
Oh,
I heard
really?
it there. So.
They were called the thalamites. That's what they call themselves.
What was that you mentioned to him about the temple? You thought it was the other, or he was.
And I've been into a thing called
I know.
Lawsonomy. You know what that is? Lawson was an airplane designer, and he made up his own religion called Lawsonomy. It was terrible.
You should do fresconomy.
Oh, I couldn't talk to Lawson. He said there were little things in your brain that walked around and directed the brain. It's just terrible.
Mini hoonies in the brain?
What?
Little mini hoonies in the brain?
Sort of many hoonies of the brain, yes.
Mm.
But these were all the odd things I was exposed to. And I was exposed to many metaphysicians, perhaps hundreds of metaphysicians. And
Which one was the most ridiculous of all?
his name was Bill something or other, but he said he could drive a car blindfolded because he has a mental image of a highway. He never demonstrated that. But he used to think that I was guided by divine guidance,
You thought you were.
Yeah. So he listened to me. But didn't get the message, What's the next question?
All right, what was
I
that?
can't say much about it.
No, I covered it because he answered.
Well, he said something about what's the Jewish sort of baptizing?
Bar mitzvah.
I heard that word. What was that
Bar
about?
mitzvah. They go and recite a bunch of things in the Jewish temples, and then at 13 years old, you have a bar mitzvah. You chant a
I
lot of
had
that
to.
stuff.
Did he have that?
My mother insisted.
Yeah. And then that's when you become a man at 13
Yeah.
after bar mitzvah.
It was ridiculous. Even my bar mitzvah I didn't
Mhm.
accept. But I couldn't do anything
Don't
about
you
it.
have to get up at a bar mitzvah and talk about some
Yeah.
parable or something?
Yeah.
You have to chant all this Jewish stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know it.
We didn't go over you meeting Katrin, the details of that.
The propeller.
Right. What led you to that? Or how did you just hear that that there was a propeller and then?
He bought a propeller for $1, and I wanted it. So I traded him, I think, a metal jockstrap for it. But, I don't know whether he played ball or not, but he said okay. And that's when he asked me some questions, and he says, I'll help you carry the propeller, it's heavy. So he carried it to the center, and I held the tip up. He was carrying all the weight. So I said, do you know anything about physics? He said, no, I told him that. You were carrying all the weight. He thought he'd help me carry it in the middle. I knew a little bit about science then, enough to know that I would, if he wanted to carry it in the center. Then when we got to his house, I explained it to him. That the center was the whole weight of the propeller. I've held the tip of the blade, which is a balancing point now. And then I went to work on him, took his religion away and everything else.
Was he religious at that time?
Well, he was about as religious as a Syrian would be. Moderate. Kids didn't care that much. They weren't that involved.
Yeah.
They were easier to change as kids. Maybe if they were older, I would have had more difficulty. Yes, next question.
Well, so then from there on, you guys just remained friends,
Yes.
interacted more.
Yes, I did.
Let's talk about your flying saucer you built.
Oh,
You remember what it looked like?
this is 1931. I used to draw flying saucers because we used to toss a hat at 45 degrees and then come back at 45 degrees.
You're boomerang it.
Boomerang, but it was a hat. And I then visualized a flying saucer. But then I had to have a hole in the middle and two propellers in the opposite direction, which lifted it up off the ground. That was the beginning of radio control. And I had radio control. I just could make it take off and land slowly, vertical. But I had very difficult time with the leading edge, so that I can lean. If it leans forward, it goes forward. You know, it's slipping off an air like a surfboard. If the wave moves, the guy is riding on one side of the wave being carried. And the wave doesn't move, it collapses and then pushes another wave up. It looks like it's traveling to us, but it's collapsing and generating another wave. When it collapses down, it generates a wave in front of it, if the wind is blowing in that direction. The wave doesn't travel. I had difficulty accepting that until somebody, a discussion at a museum, said if you put a leaf on the wave, it doesn't travel. It stays where it's at, which means the wave moves up and down. It's not a traveling form, but sound waves travel. That's when I got the idea for the acoustical washing machine. I took a siren and put it in water, but I put a membrane in front. And as I turned up the pitch of sound, it set waves in the water that hit my hand. I can feel them. So I put some clothing in there that was soiled, and I cleaned it. And so I made an ultrasonic washing machine. It was very crude, but I was not a salesperson. And I never could take a patent out on that. Ultrasonic cleaning then became the thing for dentists. They cleaned false teeth many years later with it.
And that was in California, right?
What's that?
That was in California?
I think it was in New York.
The sonic washing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also made an electrostatic vacuum cleaner. I'd make a capacitor on the bottom of the vacuum cleaner, and static charge is like a precipitron. You know what that is? Precipitates dust. Well, it would suck up the dust without a vacuum, just by charging the dust particles. And if you ran your hand over a table, you got no dust. But I was thinking of an electrostatic vacuum cleaner instead of suction. Because the suction sometimes blew the stuff out the bag and into the air. It was much cleaner. That was the days when I was experimenting with static electricity. Next question.
One thing that wasn't clear about you working on kids in Hell's Kitchen, when you're talking to the kid, was the social worker there?
Yes,
Who's
absolutely.
watching?
Yes.
Okay. And
The social worker was a nice guy, but he wouldn't let me work on the kid because he says I'd lose my job if I let you work on the kid. You're not a social worker. I said, but you're interested in science. You're not going to go by the book if there's another way of doing things. He agreed with that. But he said, please don't tell anybody. I'd lose my job. I didn't tell anybody, except I never tell who it was. But I did get to the kids right away.
how many kids do you think you worked with?
About 6 or 7. They were scheduled to come in at different times. They'd be sitting outside on a bench, next, and the social worker talked to them like an old lady. He said, you don't want to hurt your mother and steal things because they don't belong to you. So why take something from somebody else? He used that kind, which was decency and ethics. I don't know what the hell they learned in sociology or working with kids, but you don't do that. He made a lot of notes, too, about the kid's reaction. The kid kept saying, yeah, but the kid didn't identify with it.
And he dressed nicer than the kids, right?
What's that?
He dressed nicer, so they were hard to identify.
And that he wore eyeglasses, which made him a sissy to the kids. Anybody with eyeglasses. They didn't have the word nerd then. They called him a sissy.
The other day, you were talking to me and Joel about being on the radio in the early days, talking about communism. You remember?
Yes. I don't know what station that was, but that wasn't too early. I would say that must have been about maybe 35, 38 years ago, maybe. It's still early to you. But I was on the air and the guy said, what do you think of communism? I said, it's a far better system than this system, but it's not radical enough for the United States. It wasn't radical enough to me. But it was, the early Communist Manifesto talked of treating working people right and all people right. It had no racism in it at that time. I don't know what it had later. But communists, I knew some communists, they were very nice people and very well read. And this older man, he was about 45 years old when I was about 19 or 20, I think. And he was very nice to his son, but his son turned him over to the FBI, being a communist. And because the son was so propagandized, it's the days of McCarthy. Eugene, was it Eugene? I don't know what his first name was. But Charlie Chaplin hated him.
Joseph McCarthy.
Joseph McCarthy, that's right. He was simple, idiotic, a stupid individual I've ever heard one. And Nixon worked close with him. Did you know that? President, he became president later. Nixon.
Kennedy's father did too, didn't he?
Yeah, well, it could be. They were all stupid people to me. They never said anything interesting. They always said the same thing other presidents said. It's the greatest country in the world, you know. And it's a democracy. They never talked about anything social. Never. They said you have the right to become president, you can work your way up to the top, or you can negate all that and become a hobo. It's up to you. Free choice. You know.
Okay, we left off last time at Douglas Aircraft. I asked last how long you worked there.
About 18 months.
About 18 months. And during that time, were you living, was that when you were living with?
The boys.
Yeah, that came down.
Elysian Park. I asked about the cabin. He said it'll cost you $2.50 a month to rent. He says, do you want electricity? I says, yes, I'd like it. That's 25 cents a month. That was amazing. Even then, it was considered cheap because they made Boulder Dam, you know, and the TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, generating power, you know. And electricity was very cheap, so was food. For a nickel, they got a bunch of grapes, about that amount. So if I bought $1 worth of food, I had 2 big bags, they're hard to carry. And automobiles were like, well, when I was a kid in New York, I paid $8 for a Ford, an old Ford. I had to start it by pushing it up a hill, go down, and it's turned over. I couldn't crank it, it was too weak to do that. Anyway.
How much was a new car back then? About $500 or something?
A new Studebaker was about $750. And as they got faster in producing them, I imagined the price would go down. But it didn't, it went up.
And $750 was about 6 months or so of wages for people.
No, because I earned, for a while in New York, I earned $7 a week. So that was, it bought a lot of stuff. Things were pretty cheap. You could buy a bicycle for $2, used of course. And ice skates for $50. And you can buy a lot of stuff like that.
Oh yeah, did you ever live in Hermosa Beach?
Yes. Hermosa Beach was an interesting experience. I went there with the boys, and this sweet old lady owned an apartment. So she says, well, all you boys living here, I don't know about that. So I said, there'll be no fucking around. She said, okay, you can have it. And they were amazed. And when she said, okay, you can have it. Because that was in her mind, you know.
And how many years do you think you lived with the guys
About 18 months.
during that time? Okay.
And
And they got jobs at Douglas also?
yes. Well, they worked, some of them worked at Douglas, some worked for Lockheed.
That was a factory?
Yes. Aircraft.
You got them hired though, right?
Yes.
Because you were the first out there.
Yes.
And was Northrop around when you worked there?
Yes, it was a Northrop division, or the Douglas division of the Northrop Company. They merged somehow. And I drew hundreds of flying wings, different types. Northrop may have seen them, I don't know. But then I built a model of what Northrop built about 12 years before Northrop built it. 12 years before. 4 engines in the back with propellers, you know, I built a model about this size, flying wing. And I solved a lot of the problems. The flying wing used to do this a lot, because the tail assembly is way out and it's a leverage which moved. The wing is here. When the tail moved, the wing remained pivoted on an air column like an axle. And it's an elevator that went up and down. When it went, then the plane went up. So I had trouble with the flying wing, with yaw it's called, doing it. And also it tends to turn this way and that way. So what I did is I figured out how far away is the tail from the wing. And I swept the wings back so they had the same distance as a conventional plane with the body going back. It was a top view, looked like that. And the wingtips moved, served as elevators. And when they went in the opposite direction, they served as ailerons. And somebody picked it up and called it elevons, elevator and ailerons. And anyway, the chief aerodynamicist, after I met him, he said, the trouble with the flying wing, he says, Jacque, you make a lot of drawings of flying wings, but they yaw. I said, you mean you want to know how I correct yaw? He said, no, I'm telling you. I had never got a chance to tell him. If you wash out the wingtips, turn them down a little bit, you don't have yaw. It's called wash down, wash out. Little negative turn on the wingtips. And it doesn't do that anymore. But I never got a chance to talk to him. I talked to Ford about all those things. Ford was the guy that hired me.
Didn't you do a model and you...
Yes, I built a model and I brought it to the factory and I launched it in the engineering department. It's a long area in the hallway between the tables. No, you're perfect. And the aerodynamicist said, Jacque, that's a model. It's only a model, he said. He had a very strong ego. His name was Dr. Klein. He was a famous aerodynamicist.
He's the same guy who
Wouldn't talk to me.
because of the Bernoulli principle.
Yes.
And that was, he talked to you about the Bernoulli principle, well, didn't
We
talk to you about
talk about it. He says,
Right.
I didn't want to talk to you.
that
If
was
you don't accept that.
that was during dinner at Ford's.
What's that?
That was during dinner at Ford's.
Dinner.
You went to dinner at Ford's place, right?
I couldn't understand that.
You went to dinner at Ford's place?
Oh, no, I'm not with Dr. Klein, Ford.
Right.
He invited me for dinner at his home. He had a very nice home in Palos Verdes. And he tried to get me a separate lab so I can do what I wanted to do. He couldn't because of Dr. Klein. He said he's a hardhead. You know, he knew that much about it. Ford was open to all kinds of things that I talked about. He tried as hard. Same thing happened at Wright Field. Major Reichert tried to get me a lab at Wright Field where I can do my own work. But the guy in charge, I forgot his name, he was a colonel. He was in charge of the lab. And the chief test pilot, I won over. He was a captain. Captain Perry Ritchie. Very nice guy. And I talked to him about the war and my views, and he accepted it. But he says, don't talk to other officers about it unless I'm there, because they'll probably put you in the Hooskow. You know, prison, military prison. So I didn't until Perry Ritchie was there. Then Perry Ritchie really liked me, so he said, Jacque, I'd like to give you something. And he gave me a piece of aircraft structure. It's the first Japanese plane shot down at Pearl Harbor. So he gave that to me as a gift. So I made a pipe rack out of it. You know, I polished it and fixed it up. And when I wasn't there, the colonel came down and says, I want that. And he took it. And I wasn't even there. They said, oh, the colonel liked your pipe rack so much. He said he wanted it, and he took it. And so I tried to see the colonel, but I had to go through a major. You have to go through the ranks to get up. The major wouldn't let me see the colonel because I was not an aeronautical engineer. So I can never got to him. Anyway, next question.
Oh, at Douglas, when he didn't talk to you about the Bernoulli principle, was that at work?
Yes, it was at work.
When that happened? Okay.
Well, what happens, Ford asked me if I was an aeronautical draftsman or if I had any training. I said, no. He said, we can't hire you. You're not even a junior grade graduate. So I showed him some of my drawings. I got the job right away. He said, just think of new ideas. That's all I want you to do. But everything you think of will belong to an author vision of Douglas. I said, I don't care about that, that's okay. And I had an area, just like school, roped off from all the engineering drawings. All the guys doing engineering, this was special thing. And I was kind of hurt by most of the engineers. They'd either do that or twist my arm, something. Because I was just a young kid then. And they didn't resent it, that's privilege. And they resented Ford too, for giving me that privilege. But Ford tried to talk to people, and he was a very straight, very sincere guy. He couldn't convince him. He says, this kid needs a lab. He's got a lot of wonderful ideas. That's when Dr. Klein came over, because Ford pitched him. And Ed Heinemann was the chief engineer. And Leo Devlin was his name. He designed the DB-7, that Douglas Bomber 7, for France. It was being built. And I got into a discussion about its tendency to flat spin, because the wings were so far back. When they're forward, your rudder can keep the plane in line, but when the wings are in the middle of the fuselage, and it went into a flat spin. It was balanced, and it was almost impossible to get out of. So I told Ford that it has a tendency to flat spin. And then I made a model of it, a good model, and made a spin tunnel. That's a tube with a fan and blowing air up. You put the model in it and it goes into a flat spin, or it goes into a no spin and pulls out. But when I knew a flat spin, it kept spinning flat. So I showed it to Ford. He said, let me see if I get the aerodynamicist to watch this. He couldn't. The guy said, I don't want to see Fresco stuff. Anyway, I was out in the parking lot one day and a Frenchman was flying the DB7 like that and like that. Severe banks. And then one severe bank it went into a flat spin and it crashed in North American parking lot. North American was another aviation company across the street from Douglas. And it crashed on top of an automobile. And I ran in and I told Ford that it just crashed. And Ford said, I'll talk to you about it later. And then he said, did you see it crash? I said, yeah. Well, you make drawings of sequential periods it was going through. And I made some drawings of it. And Leo Devlin got angry. He was the designer of it. You know, he got angry at me and Ford said, I think we're in now. We both were asked to resign, Ford and Fresco. Well, that was my career there, 18 months.
Was that the first job you got in California?
Yes.
And what was the Rotocraft helicopter company?
A guy named Gilbert McGill worked for a guy who was an inventor. And the inventor didn't know anything, very little about aeronautics. And he wanted to make a simple helicopter. And he tried to make a simple helicopter. And McGill was somewhat creative. He simplified it a little beyond that. Then I gave him some drawings of simplifying it even more. And I just made preliminary drawings. Then a guy named Fred Landgraf, who worked at Northrop, was an engineer. And he said to me, he designed a helicopter with a cabin like an automobile. So I said, you make it straight like that. It should be streamlined, not like an automobile. So I said, well, they got to have a place to put your feet. I said, it's the same thing. You put your feet in there, it's the same length. So he agreed. So I made some recommendations for the design of his helicopter, and he used them. Fred Landgraf. And Gilbert McGill started his own company of this hoppycopter. It's a little tiny copter you wear on your back and sit on. And I made some drawings for him. I did it free, you know. And he got an Army contract to turn out hoppycopters. The thing the matter with it, the Army wanted to use it for observation in the field, but they're easy to shoot down. If a guy has 100 feet or 200 feet, you can pick him off. So the Army didn't give McGill a contract, just for making the first experimental one, which worked. That's all.
And was that?
Landgraf helicopter and Rotocraft.
Was that during Douglas or after?
During Douglas. McGill worked at Douglas. He quit when he got the Army contract.
How long was that? Just a little while? You worked on that?
I mean, how long was the Army contract?
No, how long did you work with Rotocraft?
Oh, just made the basic drawings for him.
Just a little while, okay.
Yeah. And same for Landgraf helicopter.
And how'd you get into that?
Landgraf?
No, how'd you get into Rotocraft association with them?
Oh, well, Gilbert worked at the Northrop Aircraft Company. He was an engineering draftsman. And I used to talk to him a lot. And he liked what I said about social stuff. And I used to talk to Brant Goldsworthy, you know, the guy that sent that letter. he became a millionaire later. These are the early people in aviation.
I thought he was in plastics, or plastics for aviation.
After he made plastic Fairleys for Douglas, and he had a contract, so he left the company, and he made a lot of money, and he had a kind of a lab with an oven and plastic materials for shaping it. And he let me use his stuff. And I made a lot of plastic objects, you know, all kinds of different plastic containers and things like that. That's when Lou Glasser came to me. He didn't know I knew the plastics. He just said, what's a good future? My father died and left me some money, about $50,000. He said, I'd like to get into some business. What do you think the future is? And I said, plastics. So I said, but I don't know anything about plastics. I said, I do. He said, if you work with me and you accept minimum wage just till we get off the ground so I can spend the money on the equipment. Yeah. I said, that's fair enough. But anyway, he hired about 15 kids to work for him. And I told the kids, I said, what do you need, Lou? He said, I don't know, I need 25 products per day per man. So they were able to turn out nearly 30 per man. So I said, I can't increase your wages, but I'll let you go home as soon as you turn out 30 products. So I let him go home at 11 o'clock. And Lou came and said, where is everybody? So I sent him home. Look, you got more stuff than you needed. Just keep him here all day, though. So I quit. I quit after he told me things begin to sell real well. And the lawyer told him sharing with me 50-50 was not right. And the lawyer says, give Fresco 10%. And that's what he came up to me and said, instead of 50-50, we're going to give you 10%. So I said, goodbye, Lou, and I walked out. It's called Revell Plastics. Became the biggest company in America.
What did you do?
I designed the first products for him.
Those went out on the market, right?
What? Oh, yes.
What were the first products?
The first products were lucite decorations, where I bent lucite into a lamp system, just industrial design. Lucite containers, lucite tables, sinks, furniture made out of lucite, just S-shaped chairs, you know, thick. And just a lot of normal products. And business card holders, racks, and things like that, which I had the kids assemble.
And what year was that?
That was after Douglas?
It was before the war, before World War II.
Would have been about 1940 or not 41.
Yeah,
Because Rebel started on the
yeah.
websites. It's 42. So.
Revell Plastics.
Did you make models? Because they got known for their models, right?
No, that wasn't. The airplanes came later, the model airplanes. But I made models for him. And I said, if you get into model airplane kits, you're going to have to use your money for advertising, because no one would buy model airplane kits, you know. And he used it, and it worked well.
Did they do a lot of injection molding?
Yes. He then bought injection molding machines. See, during the war, they couldn't get materials. Metals, anyway, were difficult. So he needed a gadget for a slot machine, where you put a quarter in, you get some product. It was made out of metal. And the slot machine companies couldn't get the metal, so I made it out of plastic, which was available at the time, lucite. And it was available as a surplus material. The aircraft companies made windshields, but when they cut it up, they had a big bag, a big vat full of plastics, and I made the products out of that, out of surplus materials. But I couldn't get metal to make a production line, so I bought some lumber that was available, and I made a production line out of lumber that moved the things along. That's when I met the guy from Mexico and the women on the production line. He said, can you make a production line so that the Mexican women, he had 50 women sitting on a conveyor belt, picking the black beans and the white beans, separating them into canisters. So he said, can you speed up that process? I said, you can't deliver enough beans to what I've got in mind. Anyway, they paid me very little, something like $600, and I made a unit with spokes, like a bicycle wheel, about 6 feet in diameter, and put a vacuum cleaner in the middle, ordinary vacuum cleaner, and sucked the air out of all the spokes. And they turned into a vat of bean, sucking up one bean on each spoke. There was like 150 spokes, I don't remember exactly how many, on the wheel, turning into a vat full of beans. And one bean would be sucked up by each spoke. Then I had a photoelectric cell here. If the bean was white, it passed. And if it was black, a wire trip went forward. And you can see the beans pile up by eye. And he laid off all the women. I felt terrible about that. You know, instead of giving them a shorter workday, which I would have done, and increase their pay, because it brings in more money. And then another guy came, I don't know where the hell he came from, but he said, we have to crack walnuts and take the shell off. Can you do that? Can you make a machine to take the shell off the walnuts? So I worked on that for about a week and a half, I think it took me. What I did was I had little tubes with a gas. And the tube would break the walnut as it turned, these little tubes. They break the shell and they inject the gas into it. Then I had an automobile spark plug that created a spark and blew the shells off the walnuts because the gas inside. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. And so then I had a blower blow the walnut shells off and the nuts would fall down. But that was an interesting way. Then there was another guy that was looking at eggs in a lamp to see if they were fertilized or spoiled. Go by a conveyor. Did something for that company. Then a guy in New York City at that time, there was another guy wanted me to design a house for him. And I designed a house for him. It was different. It wasn't a dome. It was all rounded. Section. I don't have drawings on that. But anyway, I don't know if that answers some of your questions.
How about when the Cancer Foundation came to you and asked you?
Oh yeah, Dr. Clyde K. Emery.
Real quickly.
Does that ring a bell?
Where's it?
Well, not quite, but all those factory designs you did, was that after Douglas?
Yes.
And then before the Trent home?
Wait a while. I'm not sure.
Was it before the Trent home?
The Trent home is after Douglas.
Right, but was the factory designs before the Trent home?
Yes, it was. And Lou Glasser came to look at the Trent home. And Jaretto and Eli said, you can't come in here. We don't want you in here. He came with friends to say, Fresco, you know, he thought he'd be buddy-buddy with me. I wasn't there, but they asked him to leave. He was very embarrassed.
Good. What about? Oh, go ahead.
What's that?
What were you gonna say?
Let's
Say
see.
something.
I wasn't there. They told me, guess who was here today? Lou Glasser. See, thousands of people went through to look at the Trent home.
And did he just contact you one day, and then you guys started working?
No, some girls, we were going with different girls, and Lou Glasser was going with another girl. We were at a party, and I was talking to Lou. He said, you're very creative, you know, and then later he came to see me, after we met at a party.
What about the Cancer Institute?
That was Clyde K. Emery, who was at the time in California. He was in charge of, he was one of the big shots in the cancer business. So I said, I think I have an approach to the problem of cancer. But I said, I'm not a doctor, nor a physiologist, nor a graduate, nor a PhD, nor a scientist. He says, what is your approach to cancer? Well, I was working with capacitors then, and I could move water, you know, and things like that. And so I figured if I made an electrostatic head, and you had skin cancer, if I put the head there, I figured the cells can only multiply toward that. See, electrostatics sucks anything. Water, metals, non-metals, anything, tissue, even your skin would bulge up. That's when I made those plastic attractants of fluids. So I figured the body is 95% water. That was the medical book said that. And I figured if cancer was multiplying, their normal cells gone haywire. There's thousands of different types of cancer. They're not all alike. The genes, in other words, become altered by different conditions. Either X-ray, smoking, damages the cells. And I figured if I can put this electrostatic head, I could make the cancer grow out of the skin toward the terminal. He said, have you any evidence of that? I said, I only showed him how I pull water with it. He said, can you build a unit and affect cells? I said, what do you want me to do? Well, cultivate some cells in a petri dish. You know what that is? It's a glass dish with an agar solution and cells growing. So I put the electrostatic head on top but shaped it like a cross to see if the cells, they took the form of a cross and multiplied toward the head. He says, I want you to do one more experiment. I said, what do you want me to do? I want you to take a rabbit and, you know, you run a light through a rabbit's ear, a projector, and you can see blood vessels and all that. So put your electrostatic head there and increase the electrostatic field so the blood would not flow. Because I said in surgery, you can use it, you make a ring, and the ring keeps the blood from coming out of the skin capillaries. If you put a ring here, it's like a magnet that affects the flow of blood. I said, then you can do more surgery unless you rupture a blood vessel. He said, that's great. If you can demonstrate through a rabbit's ear, make it go red and white. You know what I mean by that? Slow up the blood in it. So I did that. Then he said, now I'd like you to take, I said, just a minute, I don't have the money for that. I can't keep going on doing all those things for you. I need funding. He said, well, I'll get you all the funding you need. So he came back about a week later, says they turned him down. Because I was not a doctor, nor a PhD, nor a graduate of any institution, you know, known institution. So I looked at cancer differently than doctors. I looked at it as, how can I draw it? And I was working on electrostatics because I wondered what gravity was. Gravity seemed to pull many things except certain gases. It seemed to pull water and everything to the earth. And I tried to figure, what is gravity? Is it electromagnetic? And it's strong magnets, they can never pull soil or water. So then I began to use the capacitor combined with a magnet, and it would pull anything. See, an electrostatic or a supercapacitor will pull metals, plastic, fabric, anything. It was like gravity. I was interested in making artificial gravity at the time, but I wasn't interested in pulling water. And little Eli worked for a company called, I'm trying to think of the name. Anyway, they made anti-icing equipment.
Is it Raymond?
Raymond de-icing is the name of the company. Raymond was the owner. And he said, Jacque, can you keep airplane ice off airplane wings? I said, I think I can electrostatically. He says, can you demonstrate it? I said, well, if you put up the money for a aircraft wing, section that I make, I'll shoot water at it and kick the water off. He said, well, if you can do that, fine. He said, how much will it cost? And I gave him a figure, and he gave me the money. And I built the unit you saw in Popular Science, where the water was kicked off the wing. And then he said, we're in. You know, I said, industry is not going to go along with you that fast. They want you to build an airplane and put it on the airplane and all that. And they had money, but not that kind of money. Raymond DeIcer was a small company at the time. So they went out, and the aircraft company said, you want to spend $2-3 million putting it on an airplane wing? And they didn't have that kind of money, so they were very disappointed in the aircraft companies not backing up. So that's all I did for Raymond DeIcer. I don't even think they took out patents on it, because it was just in the developmental stages.
Was that also before the train
Then
home?
Popular Science called me and said, can you do that? Raymond DeIcer apparently talked to them. And they came down and they photographed that.
Now that must have been after the train home, probably. In the magazine, it's 1955 is when they took those photos.
Oh, is that
or at least that's when it came out.
That's when it came out. Raymond DeIcer was after the Trent home.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the previous thing? Yeah, the cancer, when you worked on the cancer, was that before the Trent home?
I was just moving cells in a petri dish.
Didn't he? No, I guess you told that.
I forgot his name. You got his name?
Don't they do anti-icing for wings now?
Chemicals.
With just
They use rubber on the leading
rubber,
edge.
and then they expand
Inflate
it.
it and deflate it
That's
to
right.
crack the ice off.
They also use chemicals too.
Yes, they use a chemical agent they spray on the wing, which is okay for a little while.
Yeah. I've seen
But
all the
then
rubber
I did-
parts on that.
Then I built a probe in front of the airplane and discharged electrons, DC, and charged the air molecules so they repelled each other, so the skin friction and noise would be diminished. So I told that to Raymond DeIcer. You can also get these features. It was noise suppression. Airplanes made a lot of noise. If you lived in an apartment house near the airport, people were annoyed. And they didn't like airports built nearby because of the noise. So I worked on sonic compression of noise, counterwave to jam it. And I said that can be done after you get your electrostatic thing, we'll work on that. But they never got the electrostatic thing done. So the things I worked on required a lot of equipment and had no value. I don't know if you know what I mean. When you buy a drill press, you can sell it. You buy a milling machine, you can sell it. But if you got a Fresco electrostatic generator, nobody will buy it. So I lost it. See, most industries buy equipment which you can sell, ovens for shaping metals and forging plants, you know. My stuff was all new, it was radical, so I couldn't get anything back on it. It was worth nothing.
Nate said he saw some things in a newspaper, I guess, where you were auctioning off your stuff.
Oh, but no,
I wasn't.
they came in and
Auctioneers were auctioning it off, not me.
they buzzed me off.
I couldn't pay the rent.
Yeah.
Then I was driving my car one day and I saw a corrugated building, industrial building. And I went in, the guy was German. He was a German American. He was born in this country. And I said, if you do this, if you change the design to the drawings I make, you can sell more. So he changed it. He changed the design of the building and he sold a lot of buildings. So I said, will you put up one of my buildings for me? He says, I'll give you the land and the building. He put it up for me. He said, I want you to give me $600 a year. So he built a lab for me. His name was Hauser, Walter B. Hauser. And he put up that building for me. And he sold a lot of industrial buildings that I redesigned. The building he had was roof conventional, and I bent the ends like that. It looked much better. I redesigned the entrance, and he sold a lot of buildings just for that one drawing that I made for him. And he's charged me like $600 a year, which was very little. He says, pay me as you can. He says, I'm so thankful for the fact that I became successful. That's why he put up the building for me. He paid for it and everything.
Did that become scientific research
Yes,
laboratory?
exactly. Then, sometime later, the government was going to build a freeway on Riverside Drive. So they offered me very little for the building. I don't know what it was. But Hauser said, Jacque, you can charge them quite a bit if you go to court and show you. I didn't bother with that. So I think I used that money to go to the South Pacific. I didn't care about that.
I gotta find it.
Hauser was the guy that put up the lab for me. He was a contractor, and his son worked for him. His son was an architectural draftsman. He was very conventional.
I think he used the money to.
Hold on, we need to change the tape in a minute.
I think he used the money to buy Mary Pickford's yacht.
To buy what?
Mary Pickford's yacht. Does that sound right?
I sold my lab, yeah, and I went to Florida, and the guy that sold me the yacht said it used to belong to Mary Pickford. I didn't buy it from Mary Pickford. I bought it from a dealer. He charged me $3,000 for that yacht, which he paid $25,000 for. She didn't care. You know, apparently, she should just sell it. And so, I think I paid him $400 down and very little every month. And I parked it at a yacht basin, which was 3 cents a foot. Whatever, what was on 3 cents a foot a day, I think. So it was very cheap. And there was a shower and everything on the grounds.
I'm out of tape.
Oh.